and a warm welcome to Agric Economy on ARSN Television, Mabushi Abuja, Nigeria. I am Khadija Oluwatoyin. Today's episode on the program is going to be focused on Nigeria's 64th anniversary, looking at agricultural policies. But before we go in depth to this topic, let's quickly take a break and let's see what history tells us about the policy of agriculture in Nigeria.
In recent decades, the potential contribution of agriculture to economic growth has been a subject of controversy among developing economists. While some argue that agricultural development is a prerequisite for industrialization, others strongly disagree and argue for a different path. Agriculture as an indigenous occupation in Nigeria has gone through various phases of development. This development spans three phases from pre-colonial, post-colonial, and development phase. Taking advantage of the ordinary least square method, searches through secondary data and the use of independent variables, agricultural development, capital accumulation, inflation rate and interest rate reviewed the question of whether agriculture could serve as an engine of growth of the Nigerian economy. The result of empirical analysis shows that productivity in the agricultural sector has not significantly positively impacted on the economic growth of Nigeria. However, agriculture remains the largest sector in Nigeria, contributing to an average of 24% of the nation's GDP over the past 7 years, from 2013 to 2019. In addition, the sector employs more than 36% of the country's labor force, a feat which ranks the sector as the largest employer of labor in the country. Our government's role in agriculture is implementing agricultural sector policies, cooperating to realize food security and farmers' welfare, and making pro-agricultural sector policies. Despite the contributions to the economy, Nigeria's agricultural sector faces many challenges which impact on its productivity. These include poor land tenure system, low level of irrigation farming, climate change, and land degradation. These challenges, however, have been the reason behind the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's declaration of agricultural revolution, which has in turn begun to yield positive results.
Welcome back. It's still the program Agric Economy on ARSN Television, Mabushi Abuja, Nigeria. Like I said earlier, we're going to be taking a look at agricultural policy since Nigeria's independence. Yes, I know it's a huge time, 64 years to analyze. It's long, but of course, let's see how we can, go around it, touch on some of the years and policies that came up, and then I know the earlier video would have told you one or two things about the policies so far in Nigeria and where we are today, but then I guess it's still going to, have one or two discussions on some of these policies to let us know if we've really done well or we need to do more. Of course, there is need for every nation to thrive, so hard to do more. But then, our guest for today's program is no other person. She's an agronomist, she's an agri-economist, she's a farmer, she is plenty things, yes. Her name is Nafisa Lawa. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ma.
Yes, we've seen the country move from pre-independence to post-independent era. We know that agriculture has been one of Nigeria's economic mainstay for a very long time before we had to move to oil money, and then now we are coming back to agriculture, especially when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has declared, Agric revolution and the rest of it. Looking at all of these times, tell us, what are these policies that have, lasted the test of time?
Thank you for having me today, and happy independence to Nigeria once again. Looking back, flashing back to our memories of agriculture and how agriculture has been the backbone of our economy before the discovery of oil, and it's still our backbone of our economy now. So if you are going to look much further since our independence and look into more of the political era, I think it started from Olusegun Obasanjo, the former president of Nigeria, until the age of President Ahmed Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You understand? We looked at all focus on policy structure that really want to tackle food security, which is still the global world problem today. And we're looking at our vision 2030, 2020, and things like that. So we still look at like, okay, how can we meet about the aspect of food security for the common man? How do we meet our nutritional needs? So, and that is why it is always designed for policy for every administration. And we always look back at how did we look into this policy? How did we review what had been done before, and how do we improve more on it? So the major policy will be focusing more is mostly on food security, and that is it.
Okay, so far, tell us, how has it been as someone on the field? We know that there's no policy the federal government is bringing on is aimed at ensuring that there's a contributory factor to the GDP. That's the gross domestic product. So far, have we been able to, meet up? Just
yes, we've been able to really done so well to some extent, and we should also know that there's always a room for improvement on what to look at, what is working and what is not working for us so far. Flashing back to after we became independent, coming to the political era of democracy, at the time of President Olusegun, the former president of Nigeria, President Olusegun Obasanjo, where he designed more of, he looked toward the Millennium Goal, that's the national strategy feeling, you understand. So it looked like what he wanted to target then was more directly to the farmers. So his focus was to improve more on the production aspects, you understand. So whereby there is enough seed for farmers, you understand. They try to give in seed for farmers directly. They try to bring that. In that aspect, we experience like an increase in food production. But the shortage line we experienced at that moment was we have much food at that moment, but we could not have enough post-harvest management practice, and that was like a fallback for the farmers at that moment.
So looking from that point, what other policies do you think?
Yeah, then after, as I said, the major aim of policy is to always review and improve what has been done before. Then after President Olusegun Obasanjo, the next person was Yaradua, late President Yaradua. May his soul find rest, continue to find rest. So what he focused more was Vision 2020. You do remember? So he was trying to build more of our economic sector under agriculture. You understand? So he could not achieve more, but his policy was focused primarily on food security too also. You understand? And he was trying to also adjust this issue of post-harvest that we experienced before. You understand? Before the President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan took over, and that is when it come about this transformation agenda. You understand? ATA program. So he focused more directly with the farmers, you understand, whereby he tried to make sure that the farmers receive seed, that we're trying to cut this middleman out of it, you understand, that they make sure that because the reality is that the people that are responsible for food security in Nigeria are really the rural farmers. They contribute to 70% of what average Nigerians consume on a daily basis. So if they can have access to sensitive from government, you understand, it's really done it good. So he was trying to focus on that, you understand, and there's still, for every policy there will always be a gap to still fill, and that's what the next administration coming, that's former President Muhammad Buhari. So he was focusing on youth, this youth entrepreneur, the YAP or something like that. Yes, so he focused on that, whereby he focused more on the private sector, whereby the private sector should be the leading, they should have a strong hold in the agricultural transformation in food security. So he tried to focus on, and that's where you see that there's increase in private firm doing that. We have more of we have more of rice mill, we have more of Nigerians going to production, we have more of close of border, you understand, whereby to improve our own local production. And as of today, we are still trying to depend, you understand, on the Nigerian rice. So the policy has always focused on let's see what has been done before, how can we improve it. Like there is always one of the things that affect government to people is change of government. But in terms of agriculture, one of the things, if you study it, is that you've seen that they've always review one policy to the other, and the goal of every government is always food security. How did we contribute to the sustainable goal? You understand, the SDG 2, like where there is availability of food, accessibility of food, affordability of food for the common man.
Looking at the present administration, it came up with the issue of agricultural revolution.
Yeah.
Talking about people going into the farm, touching on post-harvest, curbing post-harvest losses, post-production, advantages, and a host of others. In the face of everything happening when it comes to food system now in Nigeria, can you say that the policy so far has been able to stand well?
Oh, yes, because there is still work in progress. Because when the last administration was designing a policy, the current geometric index that people population we have at that last administration is not what we're having now. You understand? The current problem, like you see inherent some problem like insecurity for farmers, land tenure system, you understand? All this, you understand? There's still part of problem that we are still facing, you understand? Coupled to the global inflation happen to everywhere, you understand? So when it comes to food security and policy review for the government, so far so good. I think we should focus more on the present administration because there is still room for them to improve, and that is why we are here to just focus. The major any policy a government is designing, the average farmer is the one that feel the policy if it's really impacting or not. You understand? So when we are talking about policy review on this present administration, they are looking into a long-term relief, a short-term relief, and immediate relief. And part of the immediate relief that they're trying to look at is this importation of some natural grains and the rice, and this kind of trying to make some food available at some estimated price. You understand? Trying to increase our reserve so that at the off season, you understand, we can have grains and can have fruits to get. And more importantly, what's another thing they are trying to look also is price control. You understand? So that at the off season of farming, how do we have the prices? Yes, it doesn't skyrocket. So, in my own opinion, I would say the policy the government is designed for us is good to some extent, you understand, but there is more workforce to it. There is workforce to it as an individual, there is workforce to it as private organization, there is workforce to it as NGOs, and there is workforce for it at state government level. You understand? We cannot have a broad sense like this is an escalator design. Then we need to be specific in adopting the solution. You understand? So just like the Niger state government, you can see the way they are putting much effort in agriculture. So we have to calm down, like just like we all go for COP and climate this thing, and they give us like this is the new bulletin for climate, this is our main goal. But it is expected for every nation to come down to their level and design what work for them.
Okay, quickly, yes, there is need for every nation to design what works for them, especially in Nigeria, where we have the issue of food sustainability going on now. Quickly, we'll go on a break. One return. There are more things to discuss. Stay tuned. Welcome back. It's still the program Agric Economy on ARSN Television, Mabushi, Abuja, Nigeria. We've been talking about Nigeria's agricultural policies since inception of independence, or we say since independence in Nigeria. And so much has been talked about. There's need, our guest has said there is need for deliberate actions to be taken for some of these policies to be taken to the letter. And now let's welcome back to the program.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's now look at it. There's no how you have policies and it will not have gray areas. Some of these gray areas, what are some of these gray areas you think, and how can we correct them going forward?
Okay. Based on my experience on like agricultural farming experience and looking at land disputes to farmers, that's part of what the policy is still addressing, whereby there is this kind of competition for between agrarian area and so like housing, you understand. So because there's more of urbanization, people are moving from one place to another, and definitely they need a shelter to live on. So you notice that some areas being very fertile that we use for agriculture, if farmers are losing hope and confidence in those lands, they might start setting up those land off for estate development, you understand, and that would be a very great loss for us if we are now having a substitute for this kind of land area. So looking at because now we still have couples of years to really work toward the renewable agenda and attaining the food security that we all Nigerians demand for. So in my opinion, what our advice to government is that we should look into more of specific solution. We should downplay our policy to our local levels, government, state, administration level, community farmers, you understand. So that we can really try to understand what designated area are we giving out for urbanization, for housing and other businesses, sectors, and what parts that you should have that back area, like a mapping area for agriculture. When we have a mapping area for agriculture at every state, it will help us in many ways, though there is a dispute in land. But I believe there are some lands in each state that are owned by the government. So we cannot have kind of emergency farm per state. You understand? So this farm area are where we bring in more strength into to improve production on. You understand? So imagine at every local level area there is a production going on and a specific crop. You understand? At every local government area we have a community farm. You understand? So in this, looking at the high cost of transportation adding up to food inflation currently. So if we can produce within our state, you understand, we will only move in lesser quantity of what we cannot produce compared to we overly depending on one particular region for food. You understand? So if the government, the issue of food security is not what an individual alone can solve, not what government alone can solve, not what a private sector alone can solve. It is a collective effort. And the moment we can really start feeling the impact of policy design, it is when we bring it down to our local government area. So when we really hold the three arms of government responsible, when the government say, okay, there is distribution of seats, this is where the energy, the youth should go on to ask their local government authority, their state governors authority, where is our seat? Where are we assigned out for our own local government farming? We want to know what have we produced, what irrigation facility are they giving us, emergency irrigation kind of, because in during wet season, we normally have a dry spell. You understand? At that spot, we normally lose a lot of crops. So there should be all this policy design for emergency of irrigation for farmers at when they experience this kind of dry spell due to climate change. So we cannot really achieve food security if we are still looking at top-down approach. But when you look at a bottom-down approach, that is when we can start feeling the impact of the policy, the impact of fund released to agriculture, and that is where we can achieve the accessibility, affordability, and availability.
Okay, moving forward, what's your advice to stakeholders? Now, stakeholders looking at government at all levels, looking at beneficiaries of some of these policies and interventions from government, looking at the private sector, looking at the ordinary farmer. The ordinary farmer in the sense that nobody is ordinary. I apologize in using that word, but looking at a private farmer who is not having a smallholder farmer.
Yeah.
So what's your word for them?
Yeah. I think what I would say is that we are blessed with manpower and intelligence in this country, and we have the passion for it. We see our farmers, despite the up and down of the policy, the government, and things like that, they still try their best to contribute to food security and our GDP as well. So my advice to the stakeholders is we need to all work together to meet our food security demand, and working together is not only about having a meeting and having a summit. It's about having the work done, getting to the reality of the work. So we have our representative, we have our senators that represent each state. We have our local government, we have our governors that represent each state. So when these funds are being distributed, how are we allocating this fund? Well, to meet the rural farmers, to meet those that are incapable of doing the needful. And as I said earlier, at this hour now, we need to declare a community farm for each local government area. We have some land that are designated for government, so this can come in with machineries, tools, improved seeds, manpowers, youth interested in agriculture to go into this production. That is when there will not be additional cost of moving this food from one place to another. There is already an employment created for the youths, you understand, and that is when the people in that resident area can start feeling the real meaning of food security at their own locality level. And they can only experience inflation of commodities from few products that are being moved from one state to the other. You understand? So that is what we really need at this moment. And for the youth as well, we should channel our energy more on the three arms of government. You understand? When the government announces that there is a so fund released for a particular purpose, we should know where to really channel our question to, our strength to, because the moment they realize that they will be questioned, definitely they will want to do the needful. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for coming on the program this week. We look forward to having you again next time. Yes, you've heard it all. There is need for all stakeholders to put all hands on deck and ensure that these policies are being done properly. I guess as I've talked about, federal government being held accountable by youth. We've talked about the state government and local government levels to also ensure that local farms for government are being created in these local government areas and ensure that these farms have the engagement of youth that would be, planting some indigenous food items that would not really have so much price inflation on it, so that what solely would have price inflation would be due to the transportation from maybe, for example, coming from the far north to the east or from the east now to the west. On that note, to wrap it up on this episode of the program, join us again in the same session next week for another educating episode. I remain your host, Khadija Oluwatoyin. Bye for now.